Hello and welcome back to Hobbyist Novitiate. My name is Josh and this time I'm going to be adding something to my Solar Auxilia army. You may have seen recently that Matt has been building some support for his Thousand Suns. Well, he's going to need all the support he can get next time we play when I introduce him to a little friend I like to call Air Power. I wanted to add some planes to my army for a good while now, and I've just been waiting to have the time to actually sit down and put a box of these together. These Thunderbolt Fighters are an excellent air unit. They have loads of mobility and a great selection of weapons to give a really wide range of targets. Without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Building Josh. He's going to get started, so grab a hot drink and a biscuit and let's dig in. And here we go. We are starting the build. Opening up the box, getting inside, having a look at the instructions, looking over the sprues, starting to clip things out straight away. These models start with you clipping out the wing pieces and the engines and then giving them a bit of a clean up with your hobby knife and sticking them together. Immediately you can see how dense these sprues are. They've managed to pack so many pieces in here and there are just loads of lovely bits and loads of lovely details. Here you go, start to stick the engines together. They look like they're going to be fiddly and then they're really not, they just sort of slot into place. Like a lot of this kit actually, most of it was relatively easy. These little back bits for the engines were a touch fiddlier, but with a bit of poking and prodding you get them in the right place and everything is all good. After that you cut out the top half of the ship and some of the pieces that go on to be sort of engine coils or something. And then, yeah, with a mighty great edit and a click, I've got all the bits ready to glue together. Cutting out the pieces there for the very front of the plane. This tail bit, you can see, I thought initially maybe it was the nose and tried to put it on the wrong way, which was just really silly, and I quickly realised it was the bottom of the tail. There you go, the nose piece going on, and then that wing piece that I cut out earlier clips in, and just like that, most of the model is together. Now it's basically just putting in little details like these front engines, which look really, really cool, sticking on the back engine and the fin. I'm not very good with my technical terms. Now I need to decide what weapon choices I'm going to make. Hello. Building Josh raises an excellent question. Which weapons do we put on the Thunderbolt? Now, I don't completely believe in playing WYSIWYG. A lot of the time it's very easy to just say, these guys all have whichever weapons. But I like to try and be as accurate as possible and think about what I'm going to put on the model as I'm building it. So the main choice I have available to me is Hellstrike missiles, Skystrike missiles, and wing bombs. I definitely want the wing bombs. I am really excited to try out the bombing run, especially on all of Matt's weedy little infantry. I think it'll just tear apart his tactical legionaries. But for the other wing missiles, I think I want to go for the Hellstrike missiles. Both weapon options have the same range, the same shots, the same to hit, the same AP, and the same front arc. The difference is that the Hellstrike missiles get armor bane, whereas the Skystrike missiles get anti-tank and skyfire and tracking. So really, really good for anti-air. But I know that Matt doesn't have any planes at the moment, so I'm going to put Hellstrike missiles on, really make use of that re-rolling saves with the armor bane trait. Good luck, Matt. As other Josh in all his infinite wisdom decided, we're going to clip out the wing bombs and the Hellstrike missiles. These are probably the fiddliest bits on this kit. They are very small and go into a very small slot on the bottom, but with a little bit of patience and a little bit of clipping, they all come out just fine. Here we go, putting them on, a little bit of glue. And yeah, look at that, a little bit fiddly, but not too bad. I've done worse. And then yeah, they go on to their lovely, wonderful, delightful flying stands. And now I've got them all ready to prime. I put the Thunderbolts on cocktail sticks and the bases on popsicle sticks. Ooh, fancy lights. And that's it, we've finished the building phase of this video. They were really fun to put together actually. Like with all the Legions models, they are really wonderful. I've had a great time building them and I'm looking forward to getting painting. I don't really know what I'm going to do with them for the painting. I want to keep them in the same world as the rest of my army, so using the same colours and the same sort of techniques. The problem I think I'm going to have with these models is that they're quite big for small scale models, which means that a lot of the techniques I normally get away with on the rest of my army are going to look a little bit out of place here, but going to use the techniques that I use on 32mm models is going to look a little bit out of scale as well, so I'm going to have to find that sort of happy medium. So yeah, let's dig into it. As past Josh said in all his infinite wisdom, it is painting time. I've started off with a dry brush of Dawnstone. Normally I jump straight to Corax White, but I really wanted to build up the gradient in the colours on this one. I knew I was going to use contrast paints like the rest of my scheme, but as I said, these are a little bit bigger, and so I'm going to have to just work with a few more colours just to get that level of detail in. Once I've dry brushed, I've done a bit of stippling as well here, just to build up loads and loads of texture on those wings, because they're very big flat panels. Then we are moving in with some Corax White, doing a dry brush, focusing on covering most of the model, but also targeting specifically the higher areas, the raised edges, leaving those recesses darker with Dawnstone and the Chaos Black Prime that I started with. And then finally, we're just picking out a few last little bits of detail with some White Scar. Nothing too fancy here, just a good old-fashioned dry brush. You've seen it, you've seen me do it hundreds of times before. And then we're coming in with Imperial Fist contrast paint, going straight over, picking out some of the markings on the wings. On each Thunderbolt, I did these in slightly different places, just to give the squad a bit of variety. You'll see some of that later on. I don't actually love how Imperial Fist looks over grey. I'm so used to seeing it now over a sort of magenta to white gradient that it kind of throws me off a little bit, and I'm wondering if I should have done a little bit of that here just to give it some warmth in the shadows. I think otherwise it ends up looking very cold. After that, we're coming in with Leviathan Blue, which is very dark blue contrast paint, and hitting some of the other areas of panelling that I wanted to pick out in my Solar Auxilia heraldry. It's a really dark blue, this one. I do wonder if I were going to do this again. If I were going to paint the army from scratch again, I'd probably pick a different one, but I've made it work, and with a little bit of highlighting it does look quite nice. After that, Space Wolf's grey contrast is going over almost everything else that I've not done so far. All of the wings, the panels, the hull. This is basically just a very slight blue-grey tinge, which I think gives it a little bit more visual interest than just being black and white. So starting quite heavily here and then spreading it around, making sure it doesn't pool too much. As you can see, any of those pools are going to show up on your finished model, so you just want to keep it moving. Wick it away if there's too much, put it somewhere else on the model. It's never a problem. You get loads of working time with contrast paints. There you go, coming down to do the tail, picking out those fins. Really carefully coming in and doing the front here. This was pretty fiddly, but well worth the effort. And then after that, I am using Rattling Grime, my favourite colour to undercoat metals. This is going on the engines, the guns, those coils we looked at earlier. Just a really nice dark black brown that is it's a phenomenal undercoat for anything that's going to be metal later on. I think it looks so good at this scale. I love it. Did I mention that? I love it. I often joke that my solution, if a paint job isn't working very well, is to just mix Rattling Grime into some other colours and put that over the top. And it often goes a long way to looking really good. I was painting some wood recently and I hadn't quite got it nailed, but once I added Rattling Grime into the mix, it was perfect. Now we're coming in to look at the windows. There's quite a lot of space here for a model this size, so I wanted to try quite a bit hard. I've started off base coating it all with Death Reaper, which is just an off black, and then I've come in with Death Reaper and Berserker Red to make a very dark red mix. After that I've worked up to Berserker Red, and I'm just gradually building up a gradient towards the top right corner of each window. Now I'm mixing some Sanguine Scarlet into my Berserker Red. You can see just slowly building up those colours, trying to make it brighter and more vibrant up towards that corner. Straight in with raw Sanguine Scarlet out of the pot. Not out of the pot, this is thinned. All these paints are quite heavily thinned so that they're sort of just glazing over each other, and hopefully the idea is that they blend nicely together. And then mixing in a bit of Demon Red to the Sanguine Scarlet. I've done this, each panel is still a little bit wet when I put the next coat on, just to try and help feather the two colours together. I don't think I've nailed this by any stretch, but I'm excited that I gave it a go, and I'd like to keep practicing it more in future. Finally highlighting there with that final Demon Red on its own. After that, to really help sell that these are windows, they're glass, they're glossy, I've come in with White Scar and just put tiny little dots in the bottom left corner, just to give a little specular highlight, and then build a little bit of a full shine highlight up in the opposite corner there, where the light on the window is its brightest. While I've got the reds on the palette, I've hit the ends of the missile with some Sanguine Scarlet, and then just gone over the top with a little bit of that Demon Red to pick out the tips of the missile and make them look nice and angry. After that, we're coming in with Leadbelcher on my teeny tiny dry brush that I made during the last 48-hour challenge. I just cut the end off another brush that wasn't working for me. And this is going over all of the Rattling Grime covered areas just to really bring out that metal feeling. This is just my favourite way to do metallics. I think it looks so nice. You get so much texture and detail from it really easily. Then we're picking out the windows with a bit of my beloved Runord Brass. This is just going to help tie everything together. I'm going to pop this on a few little accent spots like these grates down the side, just to give the whole thing a little bit of pop, a little bit of zing. I love Runord Brass. So here they are all laid out with all their different wing designs. You can see I've put the yellow and blue in different spots on each model. I'm not quite loving it still, but I think that's because they look a little bit undefined, and so some good focused weathering is going to really help that. So I'm going to do an oil wash. This is a sort of 2-to-1 mix of raw umber and lamp black, which I'm mixing up with some Sansador by Winsor & Newton into a nice thin wash, which I start putting down very conservatively to begin with, just to see how it's going to behave on the model, putting it into those recesses, and then I very quickly get bored of that and start really slopping it on. This is going to settle wonderfully in the recesses and darken them, and then also tint the panels a little bit, give them a bit of that grimy, grungy look. As always, cat attack. As always, weathering is one of my favourite steps. I think it can go a long way to making a model really look its best. You just spend some time thinking about where it's going to be dirty, how the grime and scratches settle, and just, really bringing it to life. I also love using oil paints for this because they dry with quite a matte finish compared to using things like Agrex Earthshade, which is just a little bit satiner. And I don't think it quite sells the grime effect in the same way. Once that is dry, which was about a 48-hour wait, I'm coming in with some Calgar blue and going over all of the areas that were Leviathan blue and giving the front-facing edges and up-facing edges some very teeny tiny chips. This is going to help bring out the blue and also just sell that this thing has been in countless battles, it's been shot at hundreds and hundreds of times, and it's really well used. The paint is very thin, and I'm really being careful about how much I have on my brush. If you have too much on there, it's going to slop all over the place. You want just enough that a little bit is coming off with each careful brush stroke. You can see here how tightly my hands are braced together so that I can really really get in there, really focus my brush strokes. I feel like I've really improved in the time that I've been making this channel. Making these videos has gone a long way to giving me a lot more confidence to try new things and explore, and I'm really enjoying it. Once I've done all the edges, I'm coming down in here now and just doing some bigger scratches in little spots where I think they might be, you know, bullets might have ricocheted or a plane might have dinged on something while taking off. Just goes a long way to help give it some life. And I'm doing the same thing here on the tail fins. There you go again, some slightly bigger scratches. Now, I didn't have a good colour for highlighting the Imperial Fist yellow. Imperial yellow is about the same colour really, so I've just mixed in some white scar and I'm good to go. Here you can see I'm putting on some of those bigger scratches, making sure that I've done little chips around each of these vents. Being really careful not to overdo this. I think they look really good when they are subtle but distinct and very carefully placed, especially on these bits where the oil wash has settled thicker and is much darker. I really like this effect. It's a very high contrast look, but I think it works really well for me. I'm a big fan. I'm really pleased with how these turned out actually. Doing the same thing on the nose of this plane, which ended up yellow. Just trying to really carefully pick out those edges, just stipple my way around very slowly and steadily. My hands were shaking quite a lot by this point, which actually went quite a long way to helping with the motions. Yeah, you can see there the tremble in the brush. I've come this far and I really didn't want to mess it up. And then doing the same process again with Fenrisian grey over all of the Space Wolves grey bits. I think it's maybe not big enough a difference in brightness. I could have mixed in some white scar, possibly on some of those lighter bits. It doesn't stand out as much as I'd like it to, but certainly on the darker areas it looks really good. It's a lovely colour, Fenrisian grey. Yeah, here you go, on the wings of this plane, it looks really nice. There's a good bit of contrast and it just looks like, you know, bullets have chipped away and the fresh wounds are less grimy because of the fact that the grime has been shot off. Not by Matt though, because he's got nothing that can hurt me. Just picking out these little bends in the wing to try and accentuate the shapes. I think that helps just give them a bit of dimension, otherwise they can look a little bit flat. And then put some bigger scratches on the bigger panels. Again, just to give them some visual interest. I think it's quite easy to have them look a bit bland on their own. And now I'm repeating the process on the other side. These paints are really thin, so it's quite easy to wipe them off if you get something wrong. Just, not overdo it. I think thinning the paint to the right amount is a real skill, and it's something that's very worth practicing. You know, mix a bit up. If it's not quite right, see why it's not right. Is it too thick? Is it too thin? Is it flowing too much or not enough? If you get it the right thickness, it'll come off the brush easily, but not sort of pull on the model. I think I really nailed it here. Go me. And then finishing off with the rear fin, the dorsal fin. Is that right? Matt'll know. And that's it, we're done. I've finished the Thunderbolts. They are ready to go, ready to get out onto the tabletop, ready to cause absolute chaos in a game against Matt. I think the bombing run wing bombs are gonna do really nasty things to his infantry and probably some of his walkers and cavalry as well. And the Hellstrike missiles are going to be lethal against some of his vehicles. Between the two weapon options, I think there's a real feasibility for taking out a massive range of targets. I like the idea of you give them your regular advance order, you move over something. As you do the move, you drop the bombs, hit that thing, decimating it. At the end of your move, you can use the Interceptor special ability, which is going to let you fire a weapon, again, at a particular target, so probably the front guns. A little bit of a penalty, but you're still chewing up some enemies. And then over in the combat phase, you're using those Hellstrike missiles to destroy whatever's left. I think there's a really nasty way to use these guys, and I can't wait. And here they are, the finished models in all their glory, cluttering up the turntable and wobbling delightfully because it's really unstable. I'm really pleased with how these came out, actually. I think they look really nice. I wasn't sure halfway through the process, but once I'd sort of weathered them up and grinded down, I think it just gave them that extra little bit of pop that they needed. I can't wait to get these guys out in the game. They look really nice. There's definitely more work to be done on those windows. I think that's something that I'd love to try again and just practice a few times. Again, with all of these skills, it's just practicing, repetition, giving it a go, giving it another go. It's kind of, the first time you do things, it's going to look bad. Some of these look much better than others, but I think as I got on through the 4 models, I got better. And if I did another 4, I think I'd get better again. So just keep working at it. That's always the way. Keep painting, keep modelling. Yeah, and send us photos in our Discord if you do, because we really love seeing what people are working on. Genuinely, it's so cool. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. I'm going to be adding all sorts of new things to my army in the coming weeks. I'm really excited to be building up, adding different things, getting some variety on the tabletop, finding different ways to use my army in new and exciting ways. So stick along for the journey. See you next time.